Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Gruesome and Grotesque video. As always, I just do these videos randomly whenever I come across something that I read online or see on my Google News app that I feel merits posting here within this playlist. Such is the case with this very sad story that just occurred this past weekend there in Utah. And unfortunately, very tragically, it involved the loss of a young person, a young boy, a 13-year-old by the name of Ian Spendlove, who unfortunately had a very gruesome way of going out. This is something that it reminded me of my story, one of my most popular videos here, highest number of views that I have ever had, involving John Jones, the guy who got stuck in that Nutty Putty cave. Well, in this case, it has to do with this poor boy who actually ended up being trapped underneath 6 feet of sand. Can you imagine that? Like, the more I think about it, the more it gives me the shivers, because this is absolutely just a horrible way for someone to go. But I'm going to go ahead and I'll share that information here. Again, this just happened this past weekend. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that now. It's about 13-year-old Ian Spendlove, who ended up being trapped underneath 6 feet of sand. So here's what happened. This occurred just this past weekend again, there in Utah at a place called Coral Pink Sand Dunes State Park. I've never been there before. I've never even been to Utah as well. But those of you that have, let me know what it's like there. Let me know if it's a place that looks just otherworldly, as you see here within these pictures. Instantly, when I see these pictures, I'm thinking this looks like something straight out of like the Middle East. Like, these are the type of huge sand dunes that you would expect in those type of areas. But no, it's here in the U.S. there at that Coral Pink Sand Dunes State Park. Apparently, you can go there, and it's heavily advised that when you do, and in fact, reading some of the info from the state park's website, it states to go there, have a buddy system, make sure that you stay within the campgrounds, and also make certain that anywhere you're going to go, let your buddy know exactly when and where, so that way people won't obviously have something like this happen. But here's essentially what occurred. It was on May 14th, just this past weekend. That's when this teenager was there with his family, just vacationing. I have no idea how long they were there. Maybe it was even part of their last trip there, like in other words, the last weekend or last couple of days for it. But they were there, and then they were at a location, at least the teenager was, away from the campground. Remember, you're not really supposed to do something like that. While these dunes look as beautiful as they are, they obviously have a lot of danger associated with them because of what happened next. Somewhere along the way, this teenager, 13-year-old Ian Spendlove, decided to go to one of those dunes, and it's presumed that he went and created a tunnel. I don't know how you can make a tunnel in a dune like that. It's soft sand, right? It doesn't really stay in place. So maybe he was digging a tunnel, and it was just to pass time, knowing that there's not really much that can happen. Or who knows, maybe there actually was a tunnel that was being built and he decided to crawl into it. I don't know the exact details. Again, somebody that has gone there to the Coral Pink Sand Dunes State Park, let me know if you've been to those actual sand dunes as well. If you can actually do something like that, create a tunnel. This is all just on presumptions because, again, unfortunately, the only witness to this has passed away. But yes, somewhere on that time period, and it would have been around 5:30 p.m. or so, that's when he was doing this, and then all of a sudden, the tunnel collapsed. The worst thing you could possibly think of occurred right at that moment, and it was with 6 feet of sand above him. Can you imagine that? Like, have you ever carried sand, like buckets of sand? I have before, doing some projects, especially for some of the projects involving my job. Sand is heavy. Just even those buckets of sand is heavy. But can you imagine 6 feet? Actually, it was 6.5 feet of sand directly above you, now trapping you. You are underneath that sand, and it is completely on top of you. And of course, sand is like water. It goes everywhere. It goes anywhere and everywhere where there's any space. And so it's not like with John Jones, who, at least when he was trapped in the cave, he had as small as it was, some wiggle room. No, in this case, can you imagine just that sand, that tunnel collapsing and then immediately filling in around you? It was just horrible reading this story, because the more I thought about it, the more just scarier it became. Because obviously the next telltale sign is somebody in that situation would start flailing as much as possible to get out. But that would create the worst case scenario, because now that sand is truly filling in everywhere. The more you move, then the more that sand starts caving in. And you can just imagine just creeping around the neck, going up to the mouth, going up to the nostrils. No way, no way, no how. But that's essentially what happened to this poor kid, Ian Spendlove, whenever he had that sand tunnel collapse on him. I can imagine it being this too. Maybe he was digging something there on that sand dune, and then it caused the entire sand dune to move, almost like an avalanche. And then when that happened, it just went up straight over him, and that's obviously horribly bad too. So here you have a situation where now he was trapped. He was trapped underneath all that sand, all that pressing sand too, heavy sand, in an area where you can't breathe, and now you have complete lack of movement. Your entire surface just surrounded by sand. No, thank you. Probably the closest thing that someone can have to this is, you see those funny pictures that people post when they're at the beach, and then someone like gets buried in sand with just a head up above the sand itself. Imagine being in that situation, but ever having 6 feet of sand above you. What a horrible way to go. So this commotion, this sound, whatever it was, when it came to the collapse of the tunnel, alerted the other family members. They immediately got some of the other visitors and state park staff to try to come over as quickly as possible. They dug as fast as they could. But to give you an example, this occurred a little after, or somewhere around 5:30. It wasn't until 5:53 p.m. when he was finally out of that tunnel of sand, after out of that collapsed tunnel of sand. So we're talking about maybe 20 up to 25 minutes of him being trapped in that debilitating, just horrible situation. And this was with people that had gotten shovels. There are shovels there that people had ready, I'm guessing just for a situation like this. And they tried as best as they could, but that's how long it took. He was actually with a pulse at the time that his body was recovered, immediately transported over to the St. George Regional Hospital, and then finally to a children's hospital in Salt Lake City. But that was it. Unfortunately for Ian Spendlove, he never had any brain activity afterward, which gives you the idea that what had happened was, with all that sand collapsing on him, there was nothing to breathe, no oxygen, in other words. And so it's just a horrible way. It's being buried alive, essentially, in the worst way possible. And so because of that, he never had any brain activity, and then he was later declared dead. So very sad story all around. There's an investigation that's ongoing right now to see what happened, how this occurred. Like I mentioned earlier, the state park themselves reminded everyone, and they posted it on their website, that while these are beautiful places to explore, safety needs to be a top priority. And they mentioned everything else as far as having the buddy system, and then making sure that that people know where you are at all times for situations like this. Horrible way to go. My condolences to the family. Hopefully 13-year-old Ian Spendlove, he's at a much better place now. But I just wanted to share this story here because it reminded me again of the John Jones situation and the overall just unnervingness associated with that. And here's another very similar circumstance, different way that it happened, but still just all around just a horrible way to go. But if anybody has anything else might have missed, please post those comments below. What about those of you, again, if you've been there to the Utah area, if you've been to that state park, let me know what it's like. It would be one of those places where I would love to visit it, but I would always, make sure that, hey, safety first, right? When it comes to staying on the campgrounds, there's already risk enough when you go to state parks, and then you have all those wild animals around. But here in a situation like this, it's just the worst way to go. And so my condolences again to the family, and I'd love to hear what people's own comments are if you have visited the state park and been to one of those sand dunes. Is it truly as easy as it is? Like, those things can move, they can collapse, or are they rigid, and can you create a tunnel? Let me know below. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.